Hey everyone, it's me, the number one guy. It's a Tuesday night, and you know what that means. That's right, it's time for me to talk excessively about a man who died 88 years ago. Rudolph Fisher is, to put it lightly, the coolest guy ever made. He's like if Donald Glover went to opera instead of Coachella, you know? Like, you look at other people and think, wow, he's so cool. He's a musician and an actor. Wow, he's a basketball player and a business guy, and he's in a video game, and in 1993 he released Shaq Diesel, which the next year was certified platinum, having sold over 1 million copies. That's true, look it up. Well, if you think that's impressive, you're right. I do not want to diminish their achievements. But you know who else is really cool? Rudolph Fisher. This guy, this fella, was the entire Harlem Renaissance rolled up and stuffed into one dude. He was an author. He was a jazz musician. He did pioneering research into the field of UV light. While he was also the superintendent of Harlem's biggest hospital, while also doing x-rays on the side just for fun, I think, probably. My point is, he did so many cool things, and he has such a fascinating body of work that you need to know about him. Okay, I got a little bit ahead of myself here. So we'll just take it from the top while you sit back and listen to a white boy mansplaining to you about one of the coolest people you've never heard of. This story begins where all stories begin. Rhode Island. Yeah, technically he was born in Washington, D.C., but then his family moved, and he was raised mostly in Rhode Island. That's where he grew up. That's where he did all his schooling, all his freaking nerd stuff. Like, from the get-go, he was a massive nerd. At Brown University, he studied English and biology until he graduated as a valedictorian, Sigma male, Shrigma Delta, Pi Beta PogChamp. And then he took a little summer break to tour the East Coast as a two-man jazz band with Paul Robeson, who was in the middle of a transitionary period between being one of the best players in the NFL and becoming one of the most influential stage actors of the entire Harlem Renaissance. And they did the usual stuff, you know, went to med school, got married. He had a son that he nicknamed the New Negro after a collection, like an anthology of works by Harlem Renaissance authors that is considered so widely influential that it's been reprinted 35 times between then and 2015. And also happened to have two of his first short stories that he had ever written in there. Yeah, I think we should talk about that part for a second. Now, even though he had fun with jazz and was a really good doctor, Rudolph was best known as a writer-type guy. While he was still an overachieving jazz-playing med school student, his first short story was published in The Atlantic. And yes, that is the same Atlantic that you look at and then click away from because your free article limit is up and you don't want to pay for that. Who pays to read things on the internet? Now, The Atlantic at the time was a really prestigious publication. So if you got your name in there, you're hot stuff. You're the big shot. You're the big shot now. Now's your chance. You can be a big shot now. It's your time to be a big shot. So getting in the big leagues right away, it got some eyes on old Rudolph Fisher boy. The story he published was called The City of Refuge, and it's pretty emblematic of what he would explore for the rest of his career. It's about a guy named King who moves to Harlem from the South to get away from racism and to hopefully find a place where he can feel comfortable and where he can be free and where he can find new opportunities. He gets there, meets a guy named Mouse. Mouse more or less immediately tricks him into selling drugs and gets him arrested. Real fun time. From the beginning, Rudolph Fisher's works focused mostly on intra-racial conflict, while a lot of his contemporaries talked about interracial conflict, about the struggle of being black in America and of trying to be accepted as a full citizen, not just a second-class one. Rudolph wrote about the different kinds of blackness, how blackness presented itself among different groups and how those different groups perceived each other, and the nature of identity within those groups. Talk about poor black people, rich black people, lighter skins, darker skins, Southerners, Carabiners, that's not right, Caribbeans, Carbuncles, no. People from the Caribbean. This theme of interracial conflict really permeates through most of Rudolph Fisher's work. For example, Ringtail. It's just the story of a fight between a Caribbean immigrant and a Southern immigrant. There's Hi Y'all, a story about a light-skinned girl trying to dispel a rumor that she only likes light-skinned guys, and in the process kind of navigates her own position and her identity as a lighter-skinned black woman. There's John Archer's Nose, which is a story about a doctor named John Archer helping a detective named Perry Dart solve a murder case. Wow, that sure is a great premise for a story. I do think those two could carry at least another entire book on their own if they were ever to show up. Too bad they never did. Ah ha ha! Also, maybe not as relevant, but still really interesting. He wrote a whole essay called The Caucasian Storms Harlem, which is just about how he thought it was really weird that a bunch of white people were starting to come to jazz clubs, which, in hindsight, I think is really funny, because it proves that white people have been doing the same thing for like 100 years now, which is immediately try to jump on whatever cool new thing black people invent. And it's a cycle we still haven't broken, as evidenced by, Elvis, Vanilla Ice, Drake. Not Drake. I'm not making a light-skinned Drake joke. I'm saying, the guys that are into Drake. Lacrosse boys. So after a while writing short stories, Fisher was supposedly dared to write a full novel that depicted both upper and lower classes equally, without any bias, showing one being better than the other, or one just being, more correct, or the better, more authentic way to live. And so in response to this challenge, he wrote and published The Walls of Jericho, which is just a complete exploration of Harlem from the upper class and the lower class. It follows a rich black lawyer who doesn't like white people, and so he decides to move into a white neighborhood out of spite. A main focus is how he interacts with and treats the people that he's hired to help him with the move, namely one Bubba Brown and Jinx Jenkins. Sure are two real cool guys. Shame they never show up in anything else ever again. Ha 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 ha! And then in 1932, Fisher published his last novel called The Conjure Man Dies, which involves a conjure man dying. And that's all I'm going to say about that right now. It's a good book, though. Things were really looking up for Rudolph. He was a successful published author. He was working on adapting The Conjure Man Dies into a stage play. He had a stable living from his radiology clinic that was giving him intestinal cancer. He died from that in 1934 when he was 37 years old. Pardon my French, but that mega sucks. Because he had a body of work that was so fascinating. It's such a unique style. It just feels like such a tangible connection, like an honest depiction of Harlem at that time. You can tell these characters like Jinx and Bubber and King and Mouse, they were all real people. Maybe they're exaggerated, but they feel tangible. They feel like people that he knew. By all rights, he should have been up there with people like Langston Hughes and Zora Hurston. But instead, we just have brilliance cut short. We have an incredible body of work that's not been preserved nearly as well as it should have been. It was so hard to try to find anything about this guy that wasn't just on his Wikipedia page. I have hope. His works just speak for themselves. You read them, and these characters just come to life. And I think that as time passes, his stories will become more and more valuable, more treasure of that particular time in history and that particular community and what it felt like and what the people were going through. It feels like a very personal, authentic, real, palpable history of the Harlem Renaissance as told through just little vignettes of people living their lives. I have hope deep in my heart of hearts that one day people, literary community as a whole, will recognize how freaking cool this guy is. I mean, come on. He's a jazz playing murder doctor.